Hello, my name is Rob Garner. I'm a graduate student in New Mexico Highlands University in the Software System Design program, and today I'm giving an update on my field project. Let me demonstrate my project. It's a distributed multiplayer game system that uses virtual machines to host the servers. So I'm going to create a client here, and I'm using Godot, and I've adapted some standard multiplayer tutorials to do my project. So I'm going to travel to this location. So this is a virtual world living on an Azure virtual machine located right here. And we have actually the ability with this character to edit and position things in the world. So you can see here I can click on objects and create them. My character is currently animated to walk, but it can also fly, and I've done that to facilitate world editing. I haven't created a flying animation yet, but I'm going to walk out here and add another platform just to demonstrate that we can add things to this world space. I'm going to reactivate gravity. So we can go in this world and we can edit it. We can put things in here, we can delete things. And then if I go back to the Gifford airship, it gives me the opportunity to open up a travel menu. And I can travel to a new place and make a homestead. So I'm going to click on this and click travel. And it gives me a warning because we're going to be using Microsoft Azure, so I put a warning here that it can cost money. The idea here is that the player will actually make the server using their own Azure account and their own resources. This is a departure from traditional multiplayer games where the producer of the game produces the server infrastructure, which can be very expensive and maybe even prohibitive to indie game developers. So I'm going to create an additional, let's say I'm on 5, an additional home, and this is basically a server I'm going to be creating here. And let's see, user ID. You can't put admin because of Azure's rules, but you can put something like Rob admin. Create a user ID and password. And now what will happen is the user is asked to log into their Azure account. And the virtual machine creation process begins. So right now it's in the process of creating the virtual machine. It takes a little while. this code is all automated. It's so the user doesn't need to know Azure. I've automated the process using made a VM builder class. That's what's executing right now. We are using the Azure Resource Manager NuGet package, or series of packages actually, and essentially what happens is Azure provided us an SDK that we can call the Azure API to do the things we want. So creating a virtual machine requires doing a number of things. We have to create an ARM client. Here we also have to have credentials. There's actually several different credential approaches that you can use. I've chosen to use the interactive browser credential so that the user will always log in using their browser. I think this is usually the most comfortable option for most people because it puts them outside of my app. I don't take their user ID and password for Azure into my application. They do that completely on the outside, and then my application gets the token to interact with Azure through Azure's SDK, which allows me then to basically write code to manage to work with their Azure account to create a resource group, create a virtual net, subnet, all the things that you need, an IP address. The neat thing with the IP addresses in Azure is that you can also assign you can assign a domain name label, which means that the user does not have to, when sharing addresses for different locations that people might make, all they have to share is a domain name, which is much more reusable, and they don't have to share IP addresses directly. So we can see here we are now going through we're loading up the actual server files. The game server itself is being loaded now, and that is being done with this game server manager class. I use ssh.net, which is a library that allows me to not only upload files, which I upload with a recursive call. So basically, in my project, I have built a dedicated server for my game, and then I placed it in this directory up here, dedicated server directory. This function actually goes to this directory, takes all of the files in there in this directory structure, and is now copies it to the Azure server, and then executes code to start that application running. So right here, I've used the SSH SFTP client to upload files, and then I use an SSH command class to actually create a command and execute a command that initiates a server. Once it's done, we are now on that new server, and you can see the space is different. And unfortunately, I don't have a gigabyte airship on this, so I can't actually travel. No, I've actually updated it and changed it so that in the latest version, a later version, to bring in an airship. Let me see if I can make one. Nope, it only allows me to make platforms. So I'm going to break out of here, and then I'm going to open up a new client, and I'm going to go back to my original one, and you can see that the original one is where we were before. If I then go into the airship and hit travel, I have a travel scene, which eventually I will have be kind of a cutscene, which looks like travel, and then it brings us to the other location. So the implication of this is that people can make their own servers. In fact, let me show you on Azure. If I refresh my resource groups, you can see that this new server has been made on Azure. And so everyone could make their own server, and if they share their address, if you want to add a location, you can give it a name and then get the URL from the person who's made another server, add it here, and that would be another travel location you could go to. So you can edit and update your travel location, and this means that as I add more things that people can create in the world, more different airships, different balloon platforms, maybe some houses to put on balloon platforms, maybe some smaller, more detailed components like boxes and walls and chairs and furniture. Whatever I wanted to add, I could keep adding things for people to decorate their spaces with, and then add game mechanics to interact with things in those spaces. This now makes a distributed system, game server system, where the game developer only needs to provide the game and sell their intellectual property for the game to the users. And the users can then make their own spaces and can add creativity to their spaces that other users can visit. Because of this type of architecture, if a game like this got popular, theoretically, everyone in the world could be playing on it with millions of spaces created in Microsoft Azure. Eventually, I want to make this, open this up to AWS and Google services and possibly some other server, so that people can pick the cloud provider that you wanted, and hopefully at some point what would happen is we could now break apart the dependence between you no longer, or basically what we're doing, what this would do is make it so that if you are an independent game developer, you do not also need to become an IT services company in order to provide the server space for people to play your game. The additional thing that I would like to do going forward with this would be then to also make it so that people could create assets, such as the things that get created in the game, and upload those to a server, and the game would then be able to bring those in dynamically rather than having them hard-coded into the application. The upside of that is then I would also be breaking apart the developer of the game mechanic with the people making the artistic assets. By breaking that dependency up, then you could have independent artists making resources for the game, and they could perhaps sell those in an asset store separately from the game mechanic itself, and that would reduce dependence. So often it's hard to get a team together that has sufficient artists as well as software developers to make a game, but by breaking apart that dependence and making those assets independently usable in different spaces and worlds, and maybe even games, then we allow people to work more independently and share their resources and maybe, share in the profit, because if people want to use an asset, they would just pay the artist for that, and then they would have that available. The game developer doesn't have to be involved with trying to have a team of enough artists to create enough assets to keep people interested. They could then source their assets from a global supply of people that might be interested in making assets for the game. So this is not only talking about distributing the server system, but distributing the production process. So right now, this is just a proof of concept. My goals were to make a game that could create virtual spaces that resided on multiple virtual servers that the user could create. And I think I've achieved that. Thank you very much.